All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Working Weights LLC podcast. Coach Lambie here, your host, joined by Dwayne Ulrich. We are doing the Health and Nutrition Roundtable, take two. We're going to be
Take two.
listening to Casey Means give her discussion.
As a physician, the message I'm here to share, and at this point, echo.
No, I was going to say doctor. I'm just waiting, doctor. He's next.
The message I'm here to share and reiterate is that American health is getting destroyed. It's being destroyed because of chronic illness. And if the current trends continue, if the graphs continue in the way that they're going, at best, we're going to face profound societal instability and decreased American competitiveness. And at worst, we're going to be looking at a genocidal level health collapse in our country and the world. Over the last 50 years in the United States, we have seen rapidly rising rates of chronic illnesses throughout the entire body, the body and the brain: infertility, obesity, type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, heart disease, stroke, autoimmune disease, migraines, mental illness, chronic pain, fatigue, congenital abnormalities, chronic liver disease, autism, and infant and maternal mortality, all going up.
All right, so I'm gonna stop it right there. So, I mean, I do agree with her on a few points. Like, there are a lot of stuff that's going up, and we probably will, like, don't get a hold of it. What she said, like, there could be a genocidal collapse. Like, it is concerning.
I don't know about genocidal. I mean, yeah, I do agree that this is concerning, but
Yeah,
I
maybe
don't
the
know.
word genocidal probably isn't the right. I think,
She is so far. She's like 100 years, 50 years, maybe ahead of this. Maybe not 50, but a long time from now. And yeah,
yeah.
obviously there are things that need to be fixed, but genocidal, yeah. And I'm having difficulty taking her very seriously. Just that party dress she's wearing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
With a Topo
that's definitely
Chico.
something.
I don't know. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so she brought up the rising rates of a few things.
Yes,
So one of the things that stood out to me, we'll bring this up here, infant mortality rates. Now she said they're up.
they're down.
It's way down. Like,
Yeah.
there isn't a better time in the history of the United States to have a baby
Yeah.
than right now. They're
Yeah.
down.
Agreed.
Infant mortality rates are down. Okay, so right there, she's wrong on that. Now, maternal mortality rates. So, United States is in purple, and we can see that around the year 2000, it did bump up and kind of has seen this upward trend. However, if we scroll down here, what do we see? Maternal deaths have previously been underestimated. And so one of the
Interesting.
reasons, one of the reasons that they were previously underestimated is that if a woman went into the hospital for delivery or other complications and she had some other pre-existing condition, they listed out a few in here: HIV, cardiovascular disease. Here you go. HIV, cardiovascular diseases, and thereby indirectly led to the woman's death. Those cases weren't reported as a maternal fatality. They were
Hmm.
reported as, an HIV mortality or cardiovascular mortality. And so what that ended up leading to is a change in this ICD-10, or a pregnancy checkbox. So when a woman dies during delivery or before that, but she's pregnant, now they can check that checkbox. And so after adding this checkbox, as the checkbox was gradually implemented in the United States, more maternal deaths were reported. So this rate of increased maternal deaths isn't necessarily due to an actual increase in maternal deaths, but it's just due to a difference in how we report them now.
Mhm.
So,
It-
there's that.
yeah. Interesting. I just want to throw something in here though. Is so this isn't the only time that this type of reporting has happened. We found this when I was working at the hospital, not too long ago, as well as my wife, is that if a person came in with another uh, ailment or issue, and that was their primary issue, and if it resulted in death, then it was recorded as And maybe they had HIV, maybe they had COVID, maybe not, they didn't. But if they had
Hmm.
COVID for sure, it would be
Hmm.
COVID would be listed on there, but it wasn't what killed them.
Hmm.
So, but it would be listed as a COVID death.
Hmm.
So they're in there doing the check boxes just like this right here. When you
Hmm.
start doing the check boxes, and that's, you know,
Yeah,
it's
that's a good
interesting to know.
point. Yeah,
Yeah,
so how we report things can change,
exactly.
um, whether or not we see an increase or decrease in prevalence. Now, as far as ADHD, as she was talking about, so this was a review of the Global Burden and Disease Study. And so I don't have access to the whole thing. I could buy the article, but I just didn't. So during the period of, what is it, 1990 to 2019, the United States did see the largest increase in incidence, prevalence, and burden of ADHD. However, if we go to the figures over here and I kind of zoom in, maybe we'll zoom back out just a smidge. All right, so figure A, this is 1990, and so the red color, dark red, is going to be the highest incidence, and then the dark, really dark blue is going to be the lowest incidence. And so we can kind of see around the world how these are reported. So in 1990, Australia, and this looks like the Middle East over here, and parts of Europe, right up here north of the of Africa, also the tip of South America, had pretty large incidence and prevalence in ADHD. And then in 2019, we can see that almost the whole globe experienced an increase. There were decreases in certain countries. I think this reported Finland had the largest decrease. However, look at China here. It went from this orange to dark red. Now, are we going to try and make the case that rural China, all the way out here, they have food coloring and dyes and stuff? No, I don't think so. What happened in Canada? What happened over here in, I think this is Iceland? Or is that Greenland?
Greenland.
Either way, look at all of South America. It was orange before. Now it's red. This was blue, turned to yellow. So the prevalence in ADHD is a global problem. It's not a United States problem. It's a global problem.
Right.
And there are countries, I saw one figure, especially for Nigeria. Nigeria actually has the highest incidence worldwide. They don't.
So yeah, so I'm going to jump in also is that so there's a conversation to be had, not right now, I don't think, but there's a conversation to be had about how data is being collected. We just talked about which the check box is about maternal deaths, as well as even COVID reporting. So there's a conversation to be had about how the statistics are generated, and so for if you just look at some of those countries, I'm like, just let's think about common
Go back.
sense. Some of those folks, some of those countries, their healthcare is next to nothing, especially in the 90s. Now it's grown, but so they're going to start reporting that, oh my gosh, ADHD is on the rise. And when you look at, you start looking at data collection, what would be the commonality? What would be factors that would connect, southern, northern Africa with, United States or Australia?
Just
In how would that be generated? Oh, those people are eating too much McDonald's. What is the collection like? I think that's an important thing to look at. Yeah, these are great. These are great graphs and everything. And it would point to, oh my gosh, ADHD is on the rise. It's critical. It's going to be genocidal. But wait a minute. How's the data being collected? What's going on here? Because it
yeah.
doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, that's usually a clue to this needs closer scrutiny.
Yeah, that's true. So there's also three different things that we're looking at: prevalence, incidence, and burden. And those are not all the same thing. So prevalence, So this map may indicate prevalence, which is the total number. And that can increase just due to population growth. As the population grows, the prevalence is going to grow because the total number of people expands.
Absolutely.
When we look at incidence, that's the number per 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people or something like that.
Right.
And so these images are fuzzy here, but we can see that they have some different data being laid out here. And, you know, we have this really light blue shaded area in the top, which is going down. And so we don't know if that's incidence or prevalence burden. We don't know what these blue bars are. So yeah, how things are being reported. And then, the difference in, you were talking about the crime statistics, and it's very, very easy to say that, well, crime is down because the prevalence is lower. But that doesn't mean that the number of crimes per capita per 1,000 people is down.
Right.
So
exactly.
those things can change independent of one another.
Yep.
Going into the DSM, so changes in how ADHD is diagnosed, there have been changes in diagnostic criteria. So in the DSM-1, the age of onset for ADHD was before 7, has been changed to 12. So now all of those children who were between the ages of 8 and, beyond 7 years old, if you were 8 years and above, they didn't count you as having ADHD. But now it's before 12. So all of those children, ages 8 to 12, can now be counted. Right. So that's going to increase the rate.
Right.
And the prevalence. So number of symptoms, the minimum number of symptoms for an adult used to be 6. Now it's 5. Well, now you've just opened that up to more people.
Right.
So changes in diagnostic criteria can make incidence and prevalence go up.
Right.
Looking at the rates of autism, let's zoom in here. So we've got the United States in purple here is 15 per 1,000. This is incidence of autism. This is current stuff. All right. Now, we're not even the highest. Australia is at 39. Australia has a way higher rate of autism than the United States. Canada's at 13.2. That's not that far ahead of us. We look at places like where we at, Greece and Denmark. They're lower than us, not that much lower. Japan, 19. Japan has a higher rate of autism than we do.
Yep.
Where's China? China, 10.8. So it's weird that China, had this massive rate increase in ADHD, but not autism. So, there are some things that are just
wow, there's so much there. That's so much there. I mean, even just in the ADHD, gosh.
Yep.
I think I'm ADHD. I just, when I was a child, you just dealt with it differently,
Yeah. So some of the other things that they want to talk about is heart disease, right? Because they're very anti-statin, they're very anti-nutritional guidelines, they're very anti unsaturated oils, seed oils in particular. And so, we've looked at, I know for a fact that they've been shown charts on, let's just pull it up. Let's see. Heart disease, mortality trend. And here we can look at this. So 1950, right? Cardiovascular, you have all these things. So mortality from heart disease since the 1950s is on a downward trend. People are dying less, much less from heart disease. Now, what these people like to do is they like to say, well, that's mortality. It's not incidence. People are still getting heart disease at the same rate as they were in the 1950s and 60s. That's diabetes. So here's from the CDC key findings: 6.2% of heart disease adults in 2009. Heart disease was 6.2%. In 2018, it's at 5.5. That's down. It's not up. That's down.
Yeah.
Heart disease went down.
Yep.
This is an article from the BMJ. This is looking at the UK as well. She said stroke was up. Well, the mean average of this population is 70.5 years. Standardized incidence of all 10 pre-specified CVDs declined by 19% during 2000 to 2019. Incident of coronary heart disease and stroke decreased by 30%.
30%. Yep.
And I found this one. This is pretty fantastic stuff. So, post-mortem evidence of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease in autopsy of American soldiers over 3 wars. So in the Korean War, any evidence of atherosclerosis, look how high that was. These are young men, right?
Yeah.
To people who fought in Iraq 2001 to 2011. Look at that. Look at the difference.
Massive difference.
US
not just
heart
a little, that's huge.
Not just a little, massively. And there were some figures over here. Oh, as shown in figure 2, evidence of coronary atherosclerosis disease from 77% in 1950 to 1953 to less than 9% in 2001, 2011. And if we go back here, that's right in line with these numbers from the CDC.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Makes you wonder where she's getting her stuff.
Yeah. Where are they getting these figures from? All right, let's go on.
Americans live 8 fewer years compared to people in Japan or Switzerland, and life expectancy is going down. I took an oath to do no harm.
That's true.
But listen to these stats. We're not only doing harm, we're flagrantly allowing harm. While it sounds grim, there is very good news. We know why all of these diseases are going up, and we know how to fix it. Every disease I mentioned is caused by or worsened by metabolic dysfunction, a word that is thrilling to hear being used.
So there you go, Dwayne. Autism, the only cause for autism is metabolic dysfunction.
Yeah, that's big for her. And later on, I think a couple of the other people mentioned it as well. And again, her argument is all these diseases are going up. Well, we just proved that they're not.
Yeah, there are some that are going down. A lot of them are going up. So she mentioned a lot of cancer stuff, and that stuff is going up.
True.
However, when you look at the incident of cancer stratified by age, it is generally tending to increase in older populations. Now, there is colorectal cancer, which is increasing in young Americans. Now, why could that be? I don't know. Maybe because you have a group of people who are going on the internet telling all these young people to increase the amount of meat they're eating.
Right. I'd also like to say that also as time goes by, we are more and more aware, and there's more and more testing, 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, up to 10 years, even 10 years ago, not as many people are actively testing. And then when they pass, and we just don't know. We don't know why they just died.
Yeah.
And now we have a greater awareness of especially cancers, colorectal cancer, those kind of things. And it's just, so again, I mean, I'm not saying that those things aren't on a rise, that cancer's not on a rise, because certain ones are. But I believe that some of that is tempered by more deliberate and intentional investigation, self-awareness, go to your doctor, check your health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There you go.
And obesity in and of itself increases risk for various cancers.
All of that. Yes, absolutely.
So I just man, to list all of those things off and say, well, we know what the cause is. The only cause is metabolic dysfunction, and it's like, what? Holy smokes! Are you kidding me?
It's the party dress.
Pancreatic cancer, the only cause for pancreatic cancer is metabolic disease? Come on now.
This table. Metabolic dysfunction is a fundamental distortion of our cellular biology. It stops our cells from making energy appropriately. According to the American College of Cardiology, metabolic dysfunction now affects 93.2% of American adults. This is quite literally the cellular draining of our life force. This process is the result of 3 processes happening inside our cells: mitochondrial dysfunction, a process called oxidative stress, which is like a wildfire inside our cells, and chronic inflammation throughout the body and the gut, as we've heard about. Metabolic dysfunction is largely not a genetic issue. It's caused by toxic American ultra-processed industrial food, toxic American chemicals, toxic American medications, and our toxic sedentary indoor lifestyles.
Okay, so I got to stop her right there
Yes, please.
because
It's all American. However,
if-
we're like, oh,
yeah, if it was not
Sorry.
genetic, this is from 2008. So if diabetes and obesity does not have a genetic component, please explain to me why we have found there are 17 genetic loci associated with type 2 diabetes.
yes.
Why is it that we can test someone's genome and know whether or not they're going to be predisposed to diabetes if there's no
Yes.
genetic component?
Yes.
This is from 2008. It's not even like this was released last year and she couldn't know about this. Which leaves two options. Either she doesn't know about this, in which case she's ignorant and she probably shouldn't be up there talking about it,
Yep.
or she does know about it and she's lying. Either way, that's not good news for her.
Vote for me for prom queen.
would think
I'm
that
sorry.
the American healthcare system and our government agencies would be clamoring to fix metabolic health and reduce American suffering and costs. But they're not. They are deafeningly silent about metabolic.
Okay, they're deafeningly silent. So what I would like to know is where she got all her stats from. Didn't she just say 90 some odd percent of people have metabolic dysfunction, and she got that from the American College of whatever?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Where's she getting all these cancer rates from?
It's interesting that you'll find that every now and then you'll catch her, bless her heart, she'll diss research as being inadequate, misleading, etc. But then she quotes this research.
But then she quotes the research. Yeah. It's contradictory.
Yep.
These people are deafeningly silent. Also, the American Heart Association said that 60% of people are going to have cardiovascular disease due to their new guidelines on blood pressure.
But they're
pressure.
definitely silent.
But they're definitely silent. They're silent about it. Like it just
dysfunction and its known causes. It's not an overstatement to say that I learned virtually nothing at Stanford Medical School.
period.
Yes, she should stop right there. I think she's a GI doc, but I don't think I'd ever want her working on me. Just saying.
Yeah.
About the tens
Sorry,
of thousands of scientific papers that elucidate these root causes of why American health is plummeting.
Yeah, so we went over that clip of her on Tucker Carlson, right? And she was like,
Yes.
"There's hundreds of thousands of papers, tens of thousands with thousands of papers," and we talked about that equivocation. And then again, it's like, if I come and drop off, 50,000 trash bags full of Monopoly money, are you going to thank me for giving you all that money, or are you going to complain that I dumped a mountain of trash in your front yard? Right? You'd be like, what am I
Right.
supposed to do with this? This is Monopoly money. Yeah, but there's
Right.
tens of thousands of them.
Right, exactly.
And how environmental factors are causing it. For instance, in medical school, I did not learn that for each additional serving of ultra-processed food we eat, early mortality increases by 18%. This now makes up 67% of the foods our kids are eating.
What?
I don't know where she got that
I don't even know what that.
67% from. So I was able to find this 18% figure that she's quoting, and it comes from one study. It's not like this is a consensus statement. It's one study that she's decided she's going to cherry pick this number from. And this is basically from the Sun cohort of the
Spain.
UK Biobank. Yeah, this involves about 20,000 participants aged 20 to 91 years, followed up every 2 years between blah, blah, blah. So this is where she's getting that 18%. And so it's not that every additional serving increases your risk of mortality by 18%. It's that between the lowest quintile of intake to the highest quintile of intake, if you just averaged the increase in mortality risk, it came out to 18% for every serving, right?
Mhm.
So that's what she's getting. And I think the highest intake was like 5 servings per day or something. But the way she phrased it is to say, well, if I eat 100 servings of ultra processed food over the course of my life, my risk for early mortality goes up 1,800%. If I have 1,000, it goes up 18,000%. Really, really ridiculous stuff.
That's not how math works. Bless her heart.
Yeah, and so there's a couple things in here which were I found to be pretty hilarious. Let me see if I can find them. The main cause of death was cancer. What made up the majority of ultra processed foods in this study? Processed meats. Sugar sweetened beverages, dairy products, and French fries were the main foods contributing to the total of ultra processed foods consumed. So we just went over ultra processed foods stratified by type of food.
Yeah.
This tracks with that study that we looked over pretty well, right?
Yes. Yes.
Processed meats and sugar sweetened beverages seem to be the main thing driving these things. Now, processed meats includes things like bacon, beef jerky, sausage,
right? Slim
pepperoni,
Jims.
Slim Jims. Do you think Miss Casey Means is calling for reductions in bacon and sausage and beef jerkies?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Nope.
I think she's actually probably a proponent for an increase in those things.
Yes. As most of the people on that panel were.
Right. So, yeah. And the things that they're against are the things that did not constitute the majority of ultra processed foods.
Right.
Again, down here, the Sun cohort is a relatively young population, and it is restricted to university graduates with high education level. Consequently, the sample is not representative of the general population. Interesting there, right? Our study was observational. We cannot rule out residual confounding. What did Jordan Peterson say about these observational epidemiology studies that look at a diet factor and an outcome?
I don't remember.
They fail every time, right?
Oh, yeah. I do remember that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's interesting that Jordan Peterson didn't stand up and call her out on this.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
I think I think he just let her run. It's really interesting. We're talking about university students. I just want, I'm the everyday man ombudsman. And most of there's so much that just common sense. If you've been to college, if you've been to college, what was your diet like? Really? Come on. I mean, we subsisted on whatever we could get, and if we could get a Wendy's hamburger and some French fries, boom, score. Yeah, we maybe had access to other things, but you're just trying to get through school. So
yeah,
I'm not really sure that that's the best
and
cohort.
Yeah, so they say it in here twice. So the Sun cohort, relatively young population, it's not going to be representative of general population. And they say another weakness is limited external validity of our findings, as the cohort was not representative of the general population.
Mm-hmm.
Prevalence and incidence might not reflect those in Spain.
Right. Let me make sure that, hold on, I need to jump in real quick because I don't want people to misunderstand me. So the Sun cohort is restricted university graduates. It doesn't mean that that they were in school, but after school. But you know what? A lot of those folks they're not going to change their diet overnight. So again, that's my point. I don't want anybody to misunderstand that I didn't know that these people weren't college students, but they were university graduates with high education levels.
Yeah. They say finally the number of observed deaths was small. And we acknowledge that some analyses can be underpowered, especially in analyses considering only cause-specific mortality. And I don't know where it is in here, but I did see that. Maybe it's a different study. So, yeah. So this 18% figure that she's getting, number one, she's misrepresenting the data. it doesn't mean that if you have 100 servings, your increase goes up to 180%, or if you have or 1,800%, sorry. And if you have 1,000 servings, it's 18,000% increase of early mortality. That's not what the data says. And then also, the authors note that there are limitations to the study because it's lacking in external validity, right? These people are
Right.
not representative of the general population.
Right.
And then thirdly, we can just defer to Jordan Peterson. Well, hey, it's epidemiology and it fails every time.
Right.
I took 0 nutrition courses in medical school. I didn't learn that 82% of independently funded studies show harm from processed food, while 93% of industry-sponsored studies reflect no harm.
So I tried to look for this, man, and I could not find it. I found a bunch of people re-quoting her on this. I don't know what she's talking about, where she's getting it. The closest thing that I could find was this one on sugar sweetened beverages. So they're showing the difference between industry funded studies and independent studies. And so a strong or qualified scientific conclusion was reached in 82% of independent versus 7% of industry related sugar sweetened beverage studies. Now, that does not mean that they found harm.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it says. So if this is what she's getting numbers from, again, she's misrepresenting the data there. And then I think it was in this one. It's actually let me see if I can find it. But anyway, they basically say that they defer to all of the nutritional scientists that she's basically slandering for their expertise on sugar sweetened beverages and the health effects of sugar sweetened beverages.
In medical school, I didn't learn that 95% of the people who created the recent USDA food guidelines for America had significant conflicts of interest with the food industry. I did not learn that.
Okay, so you and I have gone over
Many
nutritional guidelines.
Many times.
Let's just grant that 95% of them have conflicts of interest. The nutritional guidelines are sound. They are not telling people to go and eat tons and tons and tons of ultra processed food. In fact,
That's
they
right.
are telling people not to do that.
Right.
1 billion pounds of synthetic pesticides are being sprayed on our food every single year. 99% of the farmland in the United States is sprayed with synthetic pesticides, many from China and Germany.
A
At
billion pounds.
A billion pounds. Yeah, it's really weird how she's coming up with these really just even numbers, right?
Wow. A billion pounds.
Yeah, so let's just grant that that's true. 70 to 80% of all plant agriculture is fed to animal agriculture. So if you would like to reduce the amount of pesticides that are used in the United States, reduce your amount of animal consumption.
Yep.
And these invisible,
You have to agree
tasteless
that.
chemicals are
Huh?
I said you have to agree to that.
Yeah.
That's sound.
strongly linked to autism, ADHD, sex hormone disruption, thyroid disease, sperm dysfunction, Alzheimer's dementia, birth defects, cancer, obesity, liver dysfunction, female infertility, and more.
Okay, I don't think that there's clear evidence that all of those diseases are directly related to pesticides.
Didn't she just say, I don't know how long we've been recording, but all of these things, the cause of all of these things is metabolic dysfunction?
Metabolic dysfunction. Yes.
Well, then what does the pesticide have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Also, you're absolutely correct. So there are links between some pesticide use and some of these diseases, not all of them.
Right.
Some of them are very weak links. However, it is not through dietary amounts. It's not through dietary consumption that these links are associated. It's the people who work in the factories and the
Yes.
people who spray it and the people who are exposed to really, really large amounts of this stuff.
Right. And we've discussed this
Mm-hmm.
numerous podcasts back. We have had this conversation.
So she's, I'm willing to bet that she's aware that those links come from environmental exposure, not dietary exposure. But she's misrepresenting that in order to push her food agenda.
All by hurting our metabolic health. I did not learn that the 8 billion tons of plastic that have been produced just in the last 100 years, plastic was only invented about 100 years ago, are being broken down into microplastics that are now filling our food, our water, and we are now even inhaling them in our air. And that very recent research from just the past couple of months tells us that now about 0.5% of our brains by weight are now plastic.
So this here, I'm going to agree with her on now, not the 0.5% of our brain weight is, I don't know where she's getting that. I looked it up. I looked that up again. Can't find it. It's probably a single study with like 4 people who had an MRI, and there's probably like some amount of mass that they couldn't distinguish on the, you know what I mean? So I'm just guessing here, but yeah, so the microplastics does seem to be an increased concern. We are finding it more and more in men's testicles. It is in our brains. It is in our noses. It is floating around our bloodstream. We are finding it in atherosclerotic plaques and stuff. So that is a concern.
I didn't learn that there are more than 80,000 toxins that have entered our food, water, air, and homes by industry, many of which are banned in Europe. And they are known to alter our gene expression,
And again, banned in Europe. I mean, which is to say that if they weren't banned in Europe, but they were banned in the United States, she would be for them?
All hail Europe. All hail Europe.
Yeah. So I've posed this question to these people on Twitter. They refuse to answer it.
Yeah.
microbiome composition and the lining of our gut.
Huh?
What do they think is different going on in Europe? What do they think is different happening in Europe? Really?
Well, I mean, that's the logical leap, is to say, so Europe does tend to have lower incidence and prevalence of a lot of these diseases. However, as we discussed last time, they're far less racially and ethnically heterogeneous than we are. If you go to Spain, you're going to find Spaniards. If you go to Germany, you're going to find Germans. If you go to Sweden, you are going to find Swedes. If you go to Denmark, you are going to find Danish, or Danes rather. If you go to Japan, you're going to find Japanese. If you go to China, you are going to find Chinese. If you come to America, you are going to find all of those things.
Yes, absolutely. What's the size comparison between the state of Texas and Sweden? Sweden would fit inside of Texas.
It's pretty big, yeah. Texas is approximately 678,000 square kilometers, while Sweden is approximately 450. Yeah.
Fit inside.
Yeah.
Just most of those countries, most of those individual countries in Europe fit within the state of Texas. And so just look at the populations, and their populations will be denser than the state of Texas, most likely. But how many people are in the United States? 300 and almost 400 billion
330
people.
330
million 330 million people. Okay, so how many countries do they have to put together in the UK? I mean, in Europe, not the UK, in Europe, to add up to 330 million people?
Oh, yeah.
So that data is skewed from the beginning. Let's just say, Europe is great. Europe is great.
It's also to say, like, oh, well, because their rates are lower, they haven't been seeing an increase. No, they have been seeing an increase in all the same stuff.
Right. And the studies that we've looked at prove that. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Disrupt our hormones. I didn't learn that the average American walks a paltry 3,500 steps per day, even though we know, based on science and top journals, that simply walking 7,000 steps a day slashes by 40 to 60% our risk of Alzheimer's, dementia, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and obesity.
Okay, so here is where she cut her own legs off. So I thought it was all of the toxic food that was the cause of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So now she's saying, well, if we just increased our steps
Walked.
from 3,500 to 7,000 steps per day, we could slash diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer, and all these in half.
Well,
Well, what happens if we increase everybody's steps to 10,000 and we get them resistance training? Slashes it
well,
more.
that must solve metabolic dysfunction.
Right. So then how much of an impact could food possibly be playing if just getting up and walking around reduces? So she said 40 to 60%. So right in the middle of that is 50%. If everybody just got up and walked around and we could reduce diabetes and obesity by 50%, how much impact could the food possibly be having?
Right. Right.
Because they're going to be
What?
eating the same foods. That's what she's
Right.
saying.
Right.
If you change nothing else, but you just increased your steps to 7,000 a day from 3,500, obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer would reduce by half. That undercuts her whole argument.
Yeah.
I certainly did not learn that medical error and medications are the third leading cause of death in the United States.
All right, this is, I mean, just where the heck did she get that from? From the CDC, the number of deaths for leading causes of deaths: heart disease at number 1, cancer number 2, accidents number 3. COVID-19, stroke, chronic lower respiratory diseases, Alzheimer's, diabetes, nephritis, nephrotic syndrome, and nephrosis, chronic liver disease, and cirrhosis. What she just said isn't even on the list.
Yep. Yep. Medications. Where's that at?
What? Medical procedures and medications. I mean, 10 seconds of Googling. You don't even have to read studies.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn that just 5 nights of sleep deprivation can induce full-blown prediabetes. I learned nothing about sleep.
What?
So 5 nights of sleep deprivation will cause you to have an impaired glucose response. So Will running a marathon. There are lots of different things that will, like if you take something to the extreme, will result in full-blown whatever, kidney disease, liver disease. However, once you get back on track, those things go away. You know what else results in full-blown diabetes? A ketogenic diet for 2 weeks.
That's right.
You will not pass an oral glucose tolerance test. You will show that you have diabetes. It will be a diabetic result. 2 weeks on a ketogenic diet. If it's saying maintaining ketosis, you're in ketosis for those 2 weeks, you will fail an oral glucose tolerance test. Now, what happens when we come off of it? Oh, guess what? You pass the oral glucose tolerance test. Does that mean a ketogenic diet causes diabetes? No. Absolutely ridiculous.
And we're getting about 20% less sleep on average than we were 100 years ago.
How could she possibly know that? Do you know the number of people or the quality of observation that would have been done 100 years ago on people's sleep?
No.
There was
No.
probably like 10 people that she has.
I didn't learn that American children are getting less time outdoors now than a maximum security prisoner. And on average, adults spend 93% of their time indoors, even though we know from the science that separation from sunlight destroys our circadian biology, and circadian biology dictates our cellular biology.
So that word destroys.
That's inflammatory for sure. Let's talk about people. Let's talk about people who live in Alaska.
It's also, it's also not true. Yeah. So there are actually RCTs, randomized control trials, where they actually put people in an environment with no windows, and they gradually did it both gradually and an instantaneous change where the lights were on for 12 hours and they changed people's circadian rhythms, and people just ended up adapting to whatever that light was. So it isn't that being indoors changes our circadian rhythm. If you are exposing yourself to artificial light for most of the day, you can change your circadian rhythm that way. Now, is it destroyed? No, because if you stop doing that thing and you come back, your circadian rhythm is going to adapt to whatever the new diurnal variation is.
Right.
I didn't learn that professional organizations that we get our practice guideline from, like the American Diabetes Association and American Academy of Pediatrics, have taken tens of millions of dollars from Coke, Cadbury, processed food companies, and vaccine manufacturers like Moderna.
So what?
Sorry, I just can't. I can't take her seriously. First of all, I wonder if she even did this research or somebody did it for her and she's reading. But manufacturers like Coke, such and such, and whatever. She's got that.
Moderna, yeah.
She's got that rhythm going on. I'm like, oh, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Yeah, and it's just the way she ends it, it's just matter of factly, as if you're supposed to just accept whatever conclusion she's selling. So
And by
what
the
if
way-
they've taken the money? If their recommendations are sound, if the American Diabetes Association is making sound recommendations for diabetics, who cares where the money's coming from? They're a nonprofit organization.
Right, right. I just got to say, so if you people that are watching or even listening, I encourage you to go watch this thing. Don't watch all of it. At least just watch her, maybe her and Jordan Peterson. But her speech, by the way, this is kind of off topic, but her speech is structured so that she reaches a crescendo at the end of her speech. So she's very good at speaking, giving a speech. Okay. The data's all flawed, but she's the only one in this group, and she's probably the least qualified, the only one in this group that got a standing ovation. What? When she is dwarfed by some of the people that's on that bench. I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. But yeah, so her end of her speech is like real. I didn't go to this. I didn't go to learn this. I didn't go to learn this. I didn't go to learn this. And then I'm done. And standing ovation. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the Pied Piper. I have to follow him.
I didn't learn that if we address these root causes,
It's okay.
that all lead to metabolic dysfunction and help patients change their food and lifestyle patterns with united, strong voice, we could reverse the chronic disease crisis in America, save millions of lives and trillions of dollars in healthcare costs per year. Instead, doctors are learning that the body is 100 separate parts, and we learn how to drug, we learn how to cut, and we learn how to bill. I'll close by saying that what we are dealing with here is so much more than a physical health crisis. This is a spiritual crisis. We are choosing death over light. We are choosing death over life. We are choosing darkness over light for people and the planet, which are inextricably linked. We are choosing to erroneously believe that we are separate from nature and that we can continue to poison nature and then outsmart it. Our path out will be a renewed respect for the miracle of life and a renewed respect for nature. We can restore health to Americans rapidly with smart policy and courageous leadership. We need a return to courage. We need a return to common sense and intuition. We need a return to awe for the sheer miraculousness of our lives. We need all hands on deck. Thank you.
Or we just need to go outside and do 7,000 steps a day.
7,000 steps per day. Yep. So, yeah, so she got choked up there at the end. I can tell that she cares.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I'm not going to argue with the fact that, like, we probably do need more attention, brought to the American public on this, as to say, like, hey, we need to get some stuff together. And there is going to probably have to be some intervention part on the food manufacturers. That is without a doubt. But overall, like, there are a lot of factors at play here. we can't just blame all of this stuff on ultra processed food. There are other
Yep.
things involved.
Yeah.
She had a giant appeal to nature fallacy there. So thinking that we're separate from nature and blah, 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 blah. At every point in human civilization and human development, every time that we have made something less natural, it has resulted in increased benefits for humans. So to say, well, we need to, man, I hate to put words in their mouths, but they continue to say things like 100 years ago, these foods weren't available 100 years ago, these products weren't available 100 years ago. Let me reshare my. Well, we'll do this one. Oh, now I can see you.
Mhm.
Let's go to life expectancy. In the year 1900, so America is this red line right here. In the year 1900, the average life expectancy for an American was 41 years from birth. Now, what these people like to do is they'll say, "Oh, well, if you discount all of the people who died early, people tended to live the same amount of time as they are now." And it's like, okay, yeah, I guess if we look at this really, really extremely biased sample of survivors, like there isn't a better example of survivorship bias than that. Well, if you don't count all the people who died, everybody lived. So from birth in the 1900s, which is what these people are suggesting we go back to, the average life expectancy was 41 years. Before that, in the 1850s, it's 35 years from birth. And again, we can come back to this infant mortality chart, like as infant and child mortality has decreased and medical technology and all kinds of different things, you know, the way we live our lives, we have better means of getting rid of our waste. We have indoor plumbing. We have clean water to drink. We have all of these things. We have these rises in life expectancy. Population levels have increased. And yeah, we were talking about population. So let's just look. Oop. What was the population of the U.S.? Yeah, let's just go to 1860. Why not? 31 million people versus 330 million people today. I mean, is that like, is that what we're advocating for? 45-year life expectancy and reduction in the total population down to 30 million people? I guarantee you'll see the rates go down.
I don't know if you noticed that other number, but of 31 million people, 3.9 million were slaves.
In 1860?
Yeah. What do you think their lives were like?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, well, yeah, that's day two. I don't know where she got half of her information from. She cut her own legs off with the increased physical activity thing there.
Yeah.
And then again, the appeal to Europe, which is to say, so there are actually there are food dyes that are banned in the United States that are allowed in Europe. Are they for those? Against them? What's the deal? And if
Yeah.
everything that is currently banned in Europe, which is not, there are restrictions on use for things. Let's say that they were allowed there. Would they suddenly change their stance on those things? And the answer is no.
Nope.
So what is their point even with that?
On that bright note,
On that bright note, yes. So everyone, listen, do you need to eat less ultra processed food? Yes, you need to eat less ultra processed food. Is it the thing that's the cause of all of your problems? No. No, it isn't.
no. And
There's
as we
more
all
to it than just that.
absolutely, and as we always say, first of all, if you're not exercising, if you don't have some kind of just health plan, just go outside, walk for 10 minutes. Just start off with 10 minutes of walking.
Mm-hmm.
Go from there to walking twice a day, 10 minutes. Just get outside and walk around for 10 minutes. You can just go around your yard or up and down your street one time, two times, and then go from there. Just build that up, build that up. Even, we're just talking about if you did 7,000 steps a day, you're way ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
Just get moving and do something. And then just pay attention to what you eat. That's a starting place. Just do that.
Yep. Get up, get moving, do a little bit more today than you did yesterday.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a ton. And if you do that every day, you'll get to a place that you can be happy and comfortable with. Do things that you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy lifting weights, don't lift the weights. You like hiking? Go do that instead.
Right.
Do whatever it is.
Right.
The dietary guidelines are sound. You can use myplate.gov. Half of your plate should be vegetables and fruits. One quarter of your plate would be starchy carbohydrates. One quarter of your plate protein. Just start there. You know what I mean? If you want to reduce the amount of starchy carbohydrates because you want to do low carb, then do that. Who cares? All right. But the dietary guidelines are not calling for you to have Fruit Loops for breakfast and a pizza for lunch. That's bogus nonsense. So, all right. 2 days of this will be done. All right. So Casey Means is a moron. Hope you guys got something out of this. And we'll see you next time, Coach Lamb.
I'm going to vote for her for prom queen. That's for sure.
All right. Bye, guys.